believe that if we give you some economic relief, help support your families, if you want to take it, if we can make our education system better for everyone, if we can change our criminal justice system, then we're going towards a place we can be proud of. Sometimes you may look at me and think I'm spoiling for a fight. Not all the time. But I'll tell you this, I'm going to fight for the things that are worth fighting for. My mother used to tell me all the time, Christopher, be yourself. Because if you are, then you're not going to have to worry tomorrow about remembering who you pretended to be yesterday. So ladies and gentlemen, this is it. What you see is what you get. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Christie. Great to be back in Loudoun County. It's great to be here in Freehold. New Jersey's a great town. And I want to thank you all for turning out this morning. It was a great crowd this morning. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. A lot of friends here, and I appreciate you all coming. You know, I'll start by telling you why I do this. I think this is number 76, I think, today. Around that number. Since I've been governor. When I first became governor, they don't prepare you for this when you're running. But when you're running, especially when you're running as a challenger like I was, you know, there's not a lot of people around. There's some great volunteers who help you, but you're not really used to what it means once the election comes and you turn out to be the winner. Your life and the way it functions completely changes. You know, you don't get to drive yourself anymore. My car sat in the garage for 2.5 years. In these black Suburbans all the time with the troopers. You never come to the front door of any place again. You always come to the back door or side door or some like really dark staircase that nobody else ever travels on. You walk through more kitchens than you've ever walked through in your entire life. And then all of a sudden you appear in the middle of all these people. And so your life becomes disoriented and really isolated. Because you see your staff all the time, you see the people who are your political supporters often. Every once in a while you see the political adversaries. And, you know, but you don't see real people, except just in passing. You're passing in the car, you're passing from one place to another. So early on in my term as governor, I said to the staff, we got to come up with a way for you to communicate with the people who actually elected me. And not the way that's filtered by the press, not the way that's handpicked by us, but just having regular folks come and be able to meet with me. And so, we decided to do this. And it's been great because I get to talk to all of you about the things that I think are really important, what I'm trying to accomplish, and what successes we're having, what failures, challenges we're having. And then I leave most of the time for you to tell me what's on your mind, to ask me whatever questions you ask. And I'll tell you, it's really been wild over the last 2.5 years, some of the stuff that's happened at these events. That's something to go back now. Some of the questions I get asked, it's everything from big questions about the direction of our country and national politics to individual problems for people that they might have with the court system or with their particular interaction with state government. And everything in between. And there's lots of times where I give big, long answers, and there's other times where I just look at you and say, I don't know. I have no idea. I'll have to find out. And so the interaction that you all have with me, the willingness to come here today and spend this time with me, is really helpful for me. It helps to keep me grounded. It helps to keep me in touch with all of you in a way that's really meaningful for me. So I thank you for doing that. Let's remember where we were in November 2009. Even in November 2009, New Jersey was a really scared and worried place. 117,000 people lost their jobs in the private sector that year. Mortgage foreclosures were going through the roof. Taxes had been raised 115 times in the 8 years before November 2009. Property taxes had gone up 70% in the 10 years before 2009. $70 billion in wealth left the state in the 5 years before 2009. People were voting for the feet and leaving. People were having houses foreclosed on. People were losing their jobs, and they were losing their home. And in fact, they took a poll right before the election in 2009, and they asked the people in New Jersey, do you think New Jersey is moving in the right direction? Or do you think it's off on the wrong track? Only 19% of New Jerseyans in October of 2009 felt like New Jersey was moving in the right direction. 19%. Less than 1 in 5 of our citizens thought our state was moving in the right direction. And then I got into office, and first couple of weeks I got there, you think all those problems were enough? And then the state treasurer and the chief of staff came to my office and they said, Governor, if you don't cut $2.2 billion out of the current budget, out of John Corzine's budget, already been approved by the legislature, in the next 4 weeks, we won't meet payroll for the second pay period in March. Imagine that. Being governor of the second wealthiest state per capita in America, and having your staff tell you in your first week on the job, if you cut $2.2 billion in spending of what's already been appropriated. And remember, 60% of it's out the door already, because we're 60% through the fiscal year by mid-January of 2010. Well, we won't be payroll for state workers, the corrections officers, the state police, folks who are serving you at motor vehicle and all the other places that the state serves the citizens. They were going to get IOUs, not paychecks. So we need to get to work. And let me tell you something. There's no fun way to do that. There's no easy way to do that. Of course, the easiest way would be just to raise your taxes. What's that?
We've been done 150 times in the last 8 years. So maybe. Maybe things are worse.
Pay the electricity bill now. Got more money now. So we did it. We didn't raise taxes, but we cut $2.2 billion in spending, and it hurt. We cut it from everywhere. But the key was we cut it from everywhere. Everybody stepped up to the plate. Everybody participated in the sacrifice. And then, right after that, that was late February. By late March, I had to propose the budget for the next year. And the treasurer came to me and said, the budget deficit, Governor, is $11 billion on a $29 billion budget. A 37% deficit. 5% is the worst deficit of any state in America. So things were really getting fun now. And again, you know, there were choices to be made. And some members of the legislature thought, go back to again, they're going to raise taxes. You know, this kind of reminded me of what my mother used to tell me when I was a kid, and I'd go out to the store with her, and I'd want to buy something new. I'd ask her if I could have something. You've all had this experience with kids, right? And my mother would look at me and say, sure, you can have it. I'd go, yeah, wow, that's my lucky day. That I can. And she goes, yeah, when you get home, go in the backyard and go to the money tree. Get the money off the money tree, Chris, and then you go out and buy it. I look at her and say, Mom, you don't have a money tree in the backyard. She goes, exactly. Well, you know, politicians in Trenton, they treated you all like the money tree. Whenever they had something they wanted to pay for it, they had any money left, they just come back and take it from you. Just pick it right out of your pocket. What are you going to do? You're the government that can take it. I just decided it's done. Treat you all like money tree. Enough. You give enough. The Tax Foundation said we were the most overtaxed citizens in America. So, they passed the tax increase and I vetoed it. And they said my budget was dead on arrival. We cut every department of state government. We closed that budget gap of $11 billion without raising the taxes. And guess what happened? They said it was going to be doomsday. So it was going to be awful. You wouldn't recognize New Jersey. You all woke up in July and the sun came up and the shore was still there. You know? And it wasn't easy, but we did it. And I think for the first time in a long time, we had somebody in this job who was actually going to treat you like adults. I mean, I knew some of the stuff I was telling you didn't want to hear. It wasn't happy news. But on the other hand, I know that you all did not elect me in November 2009 for my charm and good looks. Right? You elected me, I think, in 2009 because you said this state is so messed up, it is so dysfunctional and so off track that we need to get this prosecutor to come in here. Who just might be stubborn enough and tough enough to grab the state by the throat and say, enough. We got to do the hard things. And we're going to tell you the truth as we're doing it. And so that's what we did. And then the next year, we passed another budget, and the legislature put $1 billion in extra spending for money that we didn't have. And I was wondering, like, where did we get this money from? They said, well, we believe there's going to be more money than you believe there is. Yeah, I've seen this before. I'm going to be the guy in the middle of the year having to find $1 billion to cut someplace else. So I said no, and I took out my line item veto. And he line item vetoed $1 billion in spending out of the budget. And you look at that. You remember that there was a lot of hoo-ha after that. You might remember some of the names I was called. My members of the legislature, some of my good friends on the Democratic side. Called me some names that I can't even repeat. In this audience, I look from New Jersey and I can't repeat. It was on the front page because I see some kids here. I gotta be careful. It was on the front page of the newspaper stuff. And you just have to deal with it. You can't get worked up about it. And say, okay, we got to work together, so I just have to forget about it. Call me what they call me, but in the end, the one thing they didn't call me was wrong. You did the right thing. So now where are we? What's happening? After all those tough things that we had to do, well, we've created nearly 70,000 new private sector jobs in this state. Since I took the oath of office, 70,000 more people in New Jersey are back to work at good-paying private sector jobs and weren't working when I became governor. That's not because of me. That's because we've put policies in place that allow employers in the state to feel comfortable again that they're not going to be treated like the money tree. That if they actually make money, they don't have to worry about saving it for the next tax is going to increase, but they can actually reinvest in their business, hire more people, expand. And that's what's happening right now in New Jersey. It's not happening fast enough. We still have too many people out of work. But it's getting there. We're making the progress that we need to make. We're moving in the right direction. Now, after twice vetoing income tax increases, telling the Democrats, we are not raising taxes on my watch. We're not doing it. After putting a 2% cap on property taxes and enforcing it, after making sure that we reform the health benefit and pension system, which is going to save the taxpayers $132 billion over the next 30 years, despite the House protest from the special interests who stood up on the steps of the State House and protested day after day after day because they wanted you to pay more for their benefits. After doing all those things, where are we now? Jobs are growing, businesses are coming back into the state. And now imagine this. When I was elected, on election night, I told all of you, Kim and I were going to Trenton, to turn Trenton upside down. And lots of people say, well, what's that going to mean? How are we going to know? Here's how you know. Because now, the Democrats in Trenton are not arguing with me anymore about whether we should cut your taxes. They're just arguing about how we should cut your taxes. Let me tell you, everybody, imagine that. The same people who raised their taxes 115 times in 8 years before I got there are now arguing with me over how to raise your taxes. We've won the argument already, everybody. We're cutting taxes. So we got 54 days now. See my little sign back there? 54 days for the legislature to deliver tax relief. 54 days left. See, I work every day. The legislature just works Sundays. That's the only days they got left. They got 54 days left to get to work and get the job done to deliver tax relief to the people of New Jersey. And, you know, you all re-elected these folks last year. So they should get to work. Not have to worry about politics this year. They're not running this year. So we have to deliver tax relief. There's other things we need to do too. We need to reform our education system in this state. Here's why. The last year that we have full statistics for, which was the 2009-2010 school year, between your local governments and the state government, we spent $25 billion on K-12 education. $25 billion on K-12 education between property taxes and income taxes in the K-12 year 2009-2010. That meant our average per pupil spending was $17,836 per pupil. $17,836 per pupil, the most of any state in America per pupil. Overall, education spending since 1985, so 25 years, 26, it has increased 513%. 513% in 26 years. Do the math, that's almost 20% a year. Almost 20% a year. State school districts has increased from 1.7 billion in 1985 to 8.8 billion this year. The most that any government has ever proposed giving to local school districts in any one year. $8.8 billion in my proposed budget. But from 85 to 2012, state aid in our 31 admin districts nearly doubled as a percentage of the total state budget. 15.5% of the total state budget goes to 31 school districts. 15% of the total state budget goes to 31 school districts. Total per pupil spending in those districts are $20,859 a year. Now, let's talk about the 6 school districts that get mentioned the most around the state. That for the problems. Newark, Asbury Park, Trenton, Camden, Jersey City, and Patterson. Now, in Newark, for the 09-10 school year, $23,000 per pupil per year. Graduation rate in Newark, 32%. Asbury Park, get ready. Stay seated here in Monmouth County. 09-10 school year, it's higher now. 09-10 school year, $29,819 per pupil. Graduation rate in Asbury Park, 24.3%. Trenton, $21,000 per pupil. Graduation rate, 22%. Camden, $22,700 per pupil. Graduation rate, 21.6%. The worst of the 6. Jersey City, $21,800 per pupil. Graduation rate, 41%. That's the best. 41%, the best among those 6 districts. Patterson, $20,200 per pupil. Graduation rate, 31%. To give you some perspective, the overall New Jersey graduation rate, 83%. So, 83% graduation rate statewide, the best of those 6 districts get half that, 41.1%, and we spend at least $3,000 per pupil per year more than the state average. Now listen, I don't mind investing in education, not one bit. And I am a product of the public schools in the state. I went to the Livingston Public Schools from kindergarten through 12th grade, and I'm a proud graduate of the Livingston High School class of 1980. We're getting old. We're still proud. We're all turning 50 this year. Our class is having a big birthday party down the shore in August. All of us were turning 50. And when I look around at all of us, we've all done well. All of us have been successful. By any kind of measure, success you would use. And I think to myself, what if my parents had not moved me out of Newark at 5 years old? See, my grandparents on both sides were Newarkers, and my parents were both Newarkers. But I was born at Bethlehem Hospital in Newark, and I lived on the corner of South Orange Avenue and 14th Street, right across from West Side High School. Go there now with an escort. It's a tough part of town. And the apartment building where I lived for 5 years, where we lived on the 4th floor, doesn't exist anymore. It's a vacant lot, it was knocked down. And the apartment building on the other corner, right across from it, is still there but vacant. And my parents, my dad worked at the Breyers ice cream plant in Newark during the day, and worked his way to Rutgers, Newark at night, to be the first person in our family to get a college degree. My mom went right across the street to West Side High School, but never could afford a chance to go to college. And what they wanted for me and my brother and my sister more than anything else was for us to do better. And so when I was getting ready to turn 5, they said, we can't have him go to school here. So they borrowed $1,000 from my one grandmother and $1,000 from the other. And with my dad's VA mortgage from his service in the Army during Korea, they were able to buy a house for $22,000 in Livingston. And so when kindergarten started, I was in Livingston Public Schools, and it changed my life. So I support public education. I'm a product of public education. But I support good public education. I support public education that makes our children's futures bigger and brighter and stronger. And I no longer will protect a public education system that wastes your money and wastes our children's future. And that's the fight we're having right now, everybody. That's the fight. So when you see me out fighting on these issues, please don't misinterpret. I was in a restaurant the other night picking up a pizza. And these 4 people came up to me. And 3 of them said, Governor, we love you. We love what you're doing. I shook their hand and said, thank you. And then this 4th woman said, hi, Governor. I can't say I love you. And I said, why not? She said, I like you, but I don't love you. I said, okay, why not? And she said, because I'm a teacher. And I said, okay. I said, well then, why do you like me and not love me? She goes, because I work hard. I said, well, I know you work hard. So I don't think you think I work hard. I said, you're wrong. I said, who told you I think you don't work hard? She said, well, you know, stuff I've read, stuff I've heard at my meetings. I said, listen, are you a good teacher? She said, I am. I said, do you work hard? She said, I do. I said, then I honor her. And I said, I think you should be paid more when you're excellent, when your children achieve in your classroom. Like everybody else in America who does well should be paid better for achieving. I told her, I really believe that your profession deserves a union as good as you are. And you don't have one. this state should be guaranteed a job after 3 years and 1 day on the job without regard to how they do their job. If you do a great job, I want you to stay in teaching as long as you want. But if you're ineffective in the front of the classroom, we need to get you away from the front of that classroom and on. Over 100 teachers are not being paid to teach. They're being paid to do nothing. Because the school district has determined they're so ineffective in the front of the classroom that it is more injurious to the kids in that school district to have them in front of a classroom than it is to have them sitting in a room doing nothing and you paying for it. So you say, why don't they fire them? If they're that ineffective, why don't you fire them? You want to know why? Because the last time the Newark School District tried to fire a tenured teacher for being ineffective in the classroom, the process took 17 months and it cost them $450,000 in legal fees. It is less expensive for them to keep them in a room in Newark reading a newspaper than it is to try to get them fired. And that teacher is getting paid for with your income taxes. Your income taxes. Because over 90% of the money that funds the Newark school system comes from all the people in the state of New Jersey in their income taxes. Now listen, if we were achieving in Newark, I bet you people in Freehold and Rumson, people in Point Pleasant Beach and Toms River, people in Pagoda, people in Cape May would be willing to pay to give those kids in Newark an opportunity for achieving their goals. But I am tired, and I think you are tired, of paying a king's ransom for failure. And so, we need to reform the tenure system. And I will tell you one thing, there's a lot of discussion going on in Trenton right now. I want to make one thing really clear to the state legislature. Do not send me watered down BS tenure reform. If you send me new tenure reform, I want to accomplish tenure reform, good tenure reform. I don't want to just call it tenure reform, take a bow, and leave the stage. Because that won't improve kids' education. And teachers should have a part of their pay be on merit. You know, you have the teachers union tell you all the time, the reason that we can't have merit pay is it will destroy camaraderie in the schoolhouse. I find this interesting. Because that means that there's no camaraderie in Microsoft, there's no camaraderie in Facebook, there's no camaraderie in Caterpillar, and there's no camaraderie in General Motors. There's no camaraderie anywhere in the private sector in America where people are competing with each other in their workplace to get the most money. That's what they're saying. We know that's what it is. Whether it's in a law firm or an accounting firm, whether it's in a manufacturing plant or a corporate office, people compete with each other every day to get the most they can get. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the success of the company if people compete with each other. In fact, it helps. Instead, this is what the union would have you believe to the teacher. Now think about the mindset that says that the teacher's competing with another teacher for merit pay, that somehow that would mean that they would have no camaraderie. This is the kind of story you have to believe if you believe the union's position. Let's say there's a kid in the 3rd grade. That kid in the 3rd grade does great. He's an A student. And as he's moving on to the 4th grade, the 3rd grade teacher goes to his 4th grade teacher for the next year and says, let me tell you, this kid's a star. His homework's always on time, it's done meticulously. He pays attention to class, he raises his hand, he participates. He's really good. You're going to love him next year. Well, you get into like October, November of next year, this kid's doing C work. Not participating in his class, his homework's kind of shy. And the teacher in the 4th grade feels like, I'm just not reaching this kid for some reason. And she doesn't know why. So she goes back to that 3rd grade teacher. The 3rd grade teacher told her that he's a great kid and I love teaching him. And And she says, listen, I'm having some trouble reaching him. Could you help me out and tell me what you did to try to reach him? To believe the union position, you have to believe that the third grade teacher would say that fourth grade teacher, yeah, no, I can't help you. I can't help you, I can't tell you. See, because if I told you, you might be a competitor for me with that America. But if I don't tell you, and your kid continues to do poorly, I got a leg up on America. Let me tell you this. I've never met a teacher in my life, either that I have or that have taught my children, who would ever do that. Teachers don't become teachers to become rich. They become teachers because the joy they get is watching those children achieve, is watching them grow, is seeing their eyes light up when they get something, is seeing the smile on their face when they get a good paper back. And I'll give you the perfect example of that. 3 months after I was elected governor, I got a note at home. It's a little card. And it was a return address from Texas. It was a last name that I did not recognize. So, of course, the troopers opened it first. And, you can be careless. But once they opened it, everything was fine. I opened the note and I read it. And it said, Dear Governor-elect Christie, is this the little dark-haired boy who in 5th grade had Mrs. Manishin as his teacher? She said, I've remarried, and she wrote her new name. And she said, if it is you, and I think it is, I just wanted to write you and tell you how proud I am of you. And how excited I was on election night when I saw that little boy that I taught in the 5th grade get elected governor of New Jersey. And remember something. In the 5th grade, you're 11 years old. I got elected in 2009 when I was 47. I hadn't seen her for over 30 years. And she wrote that note to me. Found my address on the internet and wrote that note to me. You think that's a woman who would have her camaraderie ruined if she was competing for merit pay? See, the reason I get mad at the union is because they degrade their members. They make you believe that all their members are the same when we know they're not. And they make you believe that somehow evaluating teachers is an impossible task. They tell you, you can't tell who's a good teacher and who's an ineffective one. Oh yes, I see a lot of parents out in this audience. When the school year starts, how long does it take you to figure out whether your kid got the good teacher or the ineffective teacher? Right? Usually it's no later back to school night, right? Usually go back to school night, you know, and if you know, when you get back to school night, you find out. If you walk around the school and you see your friend, you say, oh, who's your kid have this year? Oh, yes, Mrs. Smith. Kind of like a bird rise and well, good luck, have a good year. By the way, right? Or you go up to the same person who got this year, I said, oh, I have Mrs. Jones. Like, oh, Mrs. Jones, amazing. We love her. She's always there. Whenever there's an email or a call, she always writes back or calls back. She stays late in the afternoon to help the kids with their problems. She comes in early in the morning. She stays through her lunch period if the kids are having a problem. She is the best. God, you're going to have a great year. They try to make you believe you need a PhD in education to figure out who the good teachers are and who the effective teachers are. I am no longer going to put up with that stopper. I am no longer going to put up with them telling us that we don't know what's best for our children. And so we need a tenure system that makes it harder to get and easier to lose. We need a merit-based system that rewards the very best teachers so they stay and can afford to stay in teaching. And we need in these districts, in these 6 districts, we need to change the system completely and inject competition into it because it's not working. So let's give parents in underprivileged, failing districts like this a voucher so they can send their kid to a private school. Let's charter schools that are willing to have a longer school day and a longer school year to deal with these issues. Let's stop spending $30,000 a year in Asbury Park when less than half of the 12th graders can read at an 8th grade level. It's obscene. It's an obscene waste of money and an obscene waste of education. So, might be able to tell me fire about this. But you know, it matters. Because if you want our state to be a great place, we cannot write off these cities and those children. Because if they are not contributors to our society, they will be detractors from our society. They will be on public benefits, costing us money rather than contributing money to taxpayers. Instead of being good mothers and fathers, they might be in jail. Instead of waking up every morning with a great sense of self-worth that comes from a job that helps you support your family, you'll be confronted with the hopelessness that comes from knowing that tomorrow may not be any better than today. Our state's not going to be great if we have big cities filled with people without hope. So this matters in Freehold. It matters in all the towns in New Jersey. Not only because you're paying for it, because you're paying for it now and you're paying more for it later. So we need to get smart about this. And let me tell you, it's going to be a fight. And it already is. Teachers Union in the last 2 years has spent $20 million in negative TV and radio ads against me. Because I have dared to speak out against their monopoly. Well, $20 million later, here I am. Let me tell you, I'm not cocky about it. 20 million is 20 million, everybody. And they got more where that came from. You want to know why? Because there's a state law that requires every school employee to pay $730 a year to the teachers union to be a member. They collect $130 million a year, every year. So when they file the disclosures about how much they spent on TV ads, and this year they spent $10.7 million on TV ads against me, they have to say where that money came from. You know where it came from this year? Reserves. They spent $10.7 million out of reserves. They haven't even started yet. $130 million don't contribute a nickel to teacher salaries, to teacher health care, to teacher pensions. It is a $130 million slush fund to reward their friends and to punish their enemies. So, if we're going to change this, we got to fight together. I'm not going to be able to do it on my own. They have crushed others in my path before me. And believe me, they will do everything in their power to crush me too. So it's up to you. You got to decide whether this, what I just told you, is acceptable to you. And remember, it's not about hating teachers. It is about liking teachers. It is about wanting them to be compensated fairly. It's about valuing what they do. Because you know, if teachers are, if they're compensated based upon merit, what do you need a union for? Right? See, the union now just negotiates for everybody. And so, if you wake up in September and you're a teacher and you walk in, you get your raise. Whatever the union is negotiating for you. Without regard to whether you're good, average, or poor. How is that? If all of a sudden, teachers are getting paid different based upon how they achieve the results they produce. Well, we need to union them. That's why the fight is the fight. Because the executive director of the union makes $500,000 a year. He don't want to give that up. The president of the union makes $270,000 a year. She's a math teacher. They have $270,000 a year sitting in their palace on State Street. They don't want to give that up. Last thing I'll say is this, then we'll get to questions. You need to know anything about the attitude that we're fighting against. Listen to this story. The executive director of the Teachers Union was on a television show recently, and he was asked about school vouchers in failing schools and said, well, why wouldn't you want these folks to be able to leave a failing school to give their child a better education? Well, we don't want anybody to leave public education. It's important for us to stay there and try to fix it together. He said, well, what if it's not being fixed? And these kids year after year are getting a bad education. Why should they be able to leave? He said, well, if they want to leave, they can. And the interviewer said, well, you know that's not true. They can't leave. They don't have the money to leave. He turned and looked squarely into the camera and said, well, life's not fair. Easy to say life's not fair when you're making $500,000 a year. Easy to say life's not fair when you're driving your luxury car back and forth to Trenton every day to a 4-story palace on State Street across from the State House and getting paid by the hard work and sweat of teachers across this state. Easy to say life's not fair when you can afford to send your child to any school you want because you're making $500,000 a year. Easy to say life's not fair to that couple in Camden who's working 4 or 5 jobs between the two of them just to keep the roof over their head and food on the table, and they're so bone tired when they get home, they can't physically sit there and do the homework with their kids. Easy to say life's not fair to those people when you're in the privileged class of the leadership of the Teachers Union. We need to stand up and fight together on this, everybody, or our educational system will never get better. Part of the program. That's you. Here's the way it works. Here's the way it works. 4 rules. Just 4. Rule number 1, you raise your hand and I call on you. Please do not yell out questions. I will not answer yelled out questions. Rule number 2, when you get the microphone, please tell me your name and where you're from. So I don't have to address you. I say you in the show. And actually use your name. You get harder now, so go on. Rule number 3. When you get this microphone, I guarantee you, it will be indescribable. But undeniable pull to make a speech. Take my word for it. So, I'll listen to your speech for a little while. But eventually, if you keep giving the speech, I'm going to eventually say, can we get to the question? It's not because you're bored by your speech, or that I want to be rude because there's lots of people here and I'd like to get to as many questions as I can. 4th and final rule is this. I see there are some people here who have been in town hall meetings before. We refer to you kindly as repeat offenders. However, I see a lot of you whose faces are not familiar. And you may have had no exposure by town hall meetings through some accounts on the TV news or YouTube, on your internet, or some of you may have seen some of my more interesting interactions with my constituents. I don't want you to be afraid. But here's the thing. There are people here who disagree with me today, and I know there are. And I call on you, I want you to express your disagreement. And if you respect it, and express it in a respectful and reasonable way, you get a respectful and reasonable disagreement from me in response. However, if you decide, because there's these cameras here today, and today's the day you want to show off. If you decide that today is the day you want to take the governor of New Jersey out for a walk, if you decide that, I want to remind you of rule number 4. Rule number 4 is, we are all from New Jersey. What that means is if you give it, you are getting it right back.
one son that's 5 years old suffers from ED, and this has been emotionally, physically, beyond, you can repair homes, you can do that, but that is also a problem. I can't fix him, it's not fixable. Every time the bus comes and it's raining, I have to carry him because he's screaming, water. You can't fix that. But you have to eat with this 8 OEM. They said, well, that help. You can't help a child with ED that suffers from that. As he's going to the group, they will agree, you can't do that. That's how their whole sons develop ulcers because of the stress of the rain. We need your help, though. We have to have a response from Chris Christie for the next 15 years. This isn't just something that I did during an ongoing problem for 12 years. Which we've never been built. We didn't know it was over the gap since I was able to be a flood almost 2 times since then. We need to have that luxury. Lieutenant Governor stood on line on September 28, 2011, that's just to put it out, and that we have all money is not to New Jersey.
Okay. Well, a few things. First, let me tell you that not only do you have the flood mitigation, but there's also, it sounds like there, that given the situation that you're in, it might also be time to consider leaving. Well, we have also a Blue Acres program that funded, I think, $39 million this year to buy homes in places where they simply there's nothing that can be done. And, right. So that's what I'm saying. You might in fact be eligible for that program as well. Now I know because sometimes people don't want to leave their homes. Right. Good. Okay. Then here's what we're going to do. We're going to get your information, and on top of looking into the flood mitigation issue and the funds that are there and how the funds got distributed. We'll also get one of our folks to get in touch with you from the DEP who runs the Blue Acres program to get you an application to apply for that program. Well, this is done by the individual homeowners, not by the town. So essentially what this program is about is going and buying home by home in these really difficult areas. The state buying the homes. And essentially say, okay, we're going to buy your home, move out, and we're not home down. We get rid of it. So, well, and that's what I'm saying to you is I think that the issue may be, it's a larger issue in how, but it's also an individual issue to some of the individual homeowners. So I can't pledge to you as I say in front of fix every problem, because I can't. But we've convinced FEMA to move some of the federal money away from repairing homes and into buying homes. Because in some of these areas, in your area it sounds like one, in certain areas of Passaic County, Wayne and Toledo, and Clifton. And that's what I'm telling you that we need time to go. And that's what, good, well, guess what? The Blue Acres program is going to be there to help you do that. So we're going to have someone from the DEP who runs the Blue Acres program reach out to help you do that. There's an application process to go through. We go through that process and be considered with the other applicants who are also applying to have their home purchased. But I started to say to myself, like, I was touring one area that flooded after Irene, and the guy came up to me and said, Governor, I just got my check from FEMA to pay for the repairs to my house from the flood in the spring. As we watched his house had been destroyed the same way in the fall and in summer by Irene. And he said, well, what am I going to do anymore? He said, I just got the house fixed. And I just got the money to reimburse me for fixing the house. Now I'm going to have to go through the whole thing again. He said, now I know that the federal government and the state government give me money to do it. He said, but why should we keep spending money this way? So it was great because the FEMA director was there to listen to that story. And then he and I both told the president about it when the president came to visit. And we convinced FEMA to start to move some of the money away from repair and into purchase. Because in some of these places, you simply cannot fix the problem. You're right. That in some of these places, the development should never be put there in the first place. And towns make some bad decisions that allow the development to happen in certain places. And we can't fix it. No matter what we do, we couldn't fix it. So in those circumstances, I think what we need to consider, not by forcing the homeowner out, but by giving the homeowner the option. You want to go? Here's a fund of money that can help you buy a home, so that you can take that money and go buy a home someplace else. So, good. Well, you're going to get caught by the DEP. Classes? Okay.
Thank you. My name is Doris Lynn. I'm from Freehold Township, and I'm in the League of Humane Voters, New Jersey. I was very disappointed that you support the bear hunt. You're also an attorney. If you read the court's decision, you'll see it's all about deference to the state agency, not about what the state agency did right. I would love to meet with you and any division of Fish and Wildlife scientists who would like, and explain to you the problems with the bear hunt policy.
Sure, listen, I've met with you before, but I've met with others who are opposed to the bear hunt, and there's arguments on both sides of it, and I believe that the weight of the arguments favor us having a bear hunt every year. I've seen you on TV before, I've seen you expressing your opinions on this, and I understand that you feel differently. You believe the science backs you. The Division of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Environmental Protection, believes that the science backed their position, which they recommended to me, which was to authorize the bear hunt. And so that's my position. I mean, I'm happy to have you meet with people at the DEP again, talk to the board for new information, but essentially this is a disagreement. The disagreement is, does the science support it or doesn't? I believe it does. And as long as I believe it does, I'm going to authorize the bear hunt. I know you oppose it. I disagree with you, and I believe that we should do it. As long as I know we're going to continue to do it.
Well, I will take the opportunity to do this other time.
There's another man right back there. He's got what you would like. Here we go.
I'm Lorenzo from Freehold Township.
Lorenzo from Freehold Township. What do you got for me today, Lorenzo?
And I was wondering if you were, because you're doing so good at being governor, I was wondering if you were going to
Run for governor again? Lorenzo. I must explain to you the vagaries of the New Jersey election laws. Listen, I made up my mind about what I'm going to do. I have a job to do. I have a 4-year contract with all of them. And it runs out in January of 2014. There'll be another election in November of 2013. And so sometime, probably by the end of this year, beginning of next, I'm going to have to decide what I'm going to do. But there's a lot of people who have a say in that other than me. Their names are Mary Pat, Andrew, Sarah, Patrick, and Bridget. Because this life I was telling you about in the beginning, about how our lives have changed, it's changed their lives a lot too. We really like the troopers. They're great guys and women. But they live with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when I want to go to, like, I went to my son's baseball game this weekend, you know, I drove. But you know, you go up to the game with the 2 black Suburbans, and the guys are getting out of the car, and they're in the suits and the things in their ears, and there's no way to be inconspicuous anymore. You know? And my son's behind the plate catching, and he hears all the people. Oh, the governor's so it has an effect on all of our lives. Now, it's also been really great too, and I love my job. I love doing it every day. So, fact is, this is something you'll probably learn as you get a little bit older. It's a little advice from me to you. Don't make any decision until you have to. You know, because you never know how information is going to change, things in your life may change. So I don't have to make that decision until the end of this year, maybe the beginning of next, and then I'll make the decision. But I will tell you this. I have never had a better job in my life than this one. I've never enjoyed myself more than I enjoy myself every day doing this. And so I'm really happy you let me do it for 4 years. If 4 more is in the works, then we'll see how it goes. In the aisle, greenish sweater, right? He's coming up on you.
Humphreys from Berkeley Township. I think you might hear me better without the microphone.
Every time I hear the others go, there's such an echo that I can't understand most of what they're saying.
I can hear you, so that really matters. So let's go.
I'm concerned about our state Supreme Court. And I looked into the qualifications of Bruce A. Harris for the state Supreme problems we have here in New Jersey with our Supreme Court. Could you please explain your reasons for not withdrawing his name?
Well, first of all, because of the outstanding justice, and here's why. You say his own experience as a bond lawyer. Bruce Harris has been a lawyer for over 20 years. Bruce Harris has worked on issues regarding municipalities and municipal law and county government. Bruce has been an elected official. He's been a councilman in his town and the mayor in his town. So he's dealt with all those issues you have to deal with as an elected official that come to the court, regarding land use and all those other issues that come before the court. Bruce is a magna cum laude graduate of Amherst College. He is an honors graduate of Yale Law School. This is a guy who is incredibly accomplished, guy who also had a career in business for a long period of time before he went to law school. This is a guy who has a lot of real life experience. Here's what I think. I think we need some people on the Supreme Court who are actually practical, who actually have dealt with real problems. Before I became the United States Attorney, I was a practicing litigator and trial lawyer in the courtrooms of New Jersey for 14 years, before I became the U.S. Attorney. And it's perfectly fine training to become a Supreme Court Justice, but it is not the only training to become a Supreme Court Justice. And I also would suggest to you that only putting judges, people who are already judges, on the Supreme Court is also a problem. Because if you like the way all the judges are operating in New Jersey right now, and I'll tell you, the thing I get more complaints about when I come to these town hall meetings, it seems to happen in every one of them, is about some judges who are acting outside the law, making law on their own, not interpreting the laws the legislature passed and the governor signed. I believe that Bruce Harris would be the kind of guy on the Supreme Court who, given his educational background, given his business background, given his background in government, given his background as a lawyer in private law firm, will be someone who will bring a complete experience to the court, something they don't have right now. They don't have someone who has elected experience on that court. They need someone on that court who can be a voice for saying, hey, this may sound good in the ivory tower of academic discussion, but let me tell you how it really works on the ground when we try to implement these things. That's something I believe Bruce Harris will bring to the court. The state Senate turned down a perfectly qualified guy who had the kind of qualifications that you're talking about, a guy who's been a litigator for 12 years, a federal prosecutor, a state court prosecutor. They turned him down for politics a month ago, 7-6. Now they're going to have a hearing on Bruce Harris sometime this month. Watch what they do. Watch what they do. They turned down a guy with the qualifications you're talking about at 7-6. See what they do with Bruce Harris. Here's what it's really all about. What it's really all about is the Democrats in the state Senate don't want to honor the election results. You know, I won. And so I'm supposed to be the they don't want the majority of Republicans on the Supreme Court because they want the Supreme Court to be able to continue to run amok and make law from the bench. I believe we need to have judges on the bench, justices at the Supreme Court, who will interpret the laws, not make the laws from the bench. No one elects If Bruce Harris gets confirmed, which he deserves to be, and you watch his career, you're going to wind up liking Bruce Harris. You're going to wind up being the kind of justice that you're going to be proud of on that board. He's a good man, and he's going to do a good job as a justice of the Supreme Court.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Governor.
Hey.
My name is Adam Osprey. Born in Freehold and growing up on the Jersey Shore. Born in Freehold, growing up on the Jersey Shore. My grandfather, Al Osprey, was a townsman here in Freehold for many years. We've run our family business out of Freehold for over 30 years now. Currently, we were selected as one of 4 contractors on all we did to remove liability for one of the largest oil companies in the world all around New Jersey. We're the only New Jersey company eligible for this because of our superior health and safety and superior work product. I now have to compete with companies from New York and Pennsylvania. I'm from New Jersey, but I think that should be an advantage of New Jersey, because this is for New Jersey. I don't feel it that way. I feel I'm at a disadvantage now because of all the taxes, all the issues we do in New Jersey. I just don't think that's fair. And that also brings me into the subject of the same thing. Doing the same thing. Now stepping into a private line and telling us how much profit we can make back. For a government entity that runs the fund that was designed to be defeated by less than 50 companies, how do they get any right to step into my company, produce a superior product, and tell me how much I should charge?
All right. I didn't get the idea. The answer is I don't know. But you know what? You're going to have to find interest. And so this afternoon, just get a call from me, and you're going to get a call from them. I'm calling DP Commissioner Bob Martin and ask him about all this, because I got to tell you the truth. I didn't know anything about what you just said. And so I'm going to now find out about it, and you're going to either get a call back from me or a call back from Commissioner Martin directly to talk about it. Because it doesn't seem to me, because I don't want to address everyone, but I am very concerned about the idea that DP would step in and try to interfere with the private contract between two private entities. We got nothing in this city to deal with things that we're supposed to be doing. We're not getting in the middle of your private contractual relationships with other private clients. On the bidding stuff, I will tell you that people argue both sides of that, okay? There are people who argue me, like the others all the time, I'm a New Jersey company, I should get an advantage because I'm a New Jersey company, I pay New Jersey taxes. And the other people argue to me that if the out-of-state price is lower, that saves taxpayers money, then you should go with whoever it is, whether it's an in-state company or out-of-state company. So that's a raging argument that goes on all the time inside the government. I'm more inclined to your point of view, but I'm told often that the bidding laws and the way they're written don't allow us to do some of that favoritism towards New Jersey companies
That's at least in state bidding that I was discussing. That was private bidding.
That was private.
That was private bidding. The other state funding is a separate issue.
Right. But let me do this. Instead of us figuring this out in front of everybody, I've got the idea. I understand what the problems are now. I'm going to talk to Commissioner Martin. I'm going to have Commissioner Martin call you, and we're going to try to deal with those problems, because a lot of them may be solved. Because remember this, I'm in charge of a $30 billion, 60,000 employee operation where 60,000 people have a letterhead every day with my name on it. And I have no idea what the hell they're doing. Okay? Right? So, that's another reason. You're a perfect example of what I'm saying when we were going to talk about why I like doing these things. Because I would never know about this problem. Ever.
My understanding is that is a rumor of what may be happening.
Well, rumors have a strange way of becoming real unless you get in the middle of them. And so you give me some good intelligence here, both on what's happening and what's rumored to be happening. And we need to make sure that we deal with it right away. Because, you know, if I let it get away from me, there'll be 18 other problems that come on my desk that'll get in between me and you and your problem. So let's deal with it today. Let's get on the phone with Bob Martin on my way back from here. And I guarantee you within the next 24 hours, if you give your information to Joe, you will get a call from the Commissioner of the DEP to talk about this issue and try to deal with it. And I'm going to get much more educated on it in the next 20 minutes on the way back to Trenton. So, thank you very much.
The reason why he's reading at a kindergarten level is because he has dyslexia. I really know about this. I've seen other town hall meetings. The state of New Jersey apparently does not recognize dyslexia. My school district told me that they cannot recognize it because it's a medical diagnosis. He was tested twice in 4 years throughout the school district. Never went into special education, was found ineligible because he has the average IQ, but he's failing in English. I spent over $10,000 between evaluations, outside help, and attorneys to finally get the school to provide this something called Wilson reading program. There's many reading programs. I'm part of this group called Doherty Dyslexia of New Jersey. We attended the Reading Disability Task Force meeting last week that was held in Trenton. Thank you for appointing other members for that. It's getting lonely. I'm not the only parent in New Jersey who is suffering from dyslexia. And it's hereditary. This is not going away. Many people in jail, 70% of them cannot read or write. Dyslexia is not seeing words backwards. There's a lot more to it. So we gave her 3.5 hours worth of testimony to the task force. They're supposed to be coming in July with their recommendations colleges. But what do we do? I feel like there's been a good standing there that are seniors in high school who spend a lifetime failing.
Yeah, I can't hear some failures today. I can just try to prevent the failures tomorrow, and that's why I put in the task force. I wanted to get a group of people who have experience in this to come back to me, because I've heard lots of different stories, as you've alluded to. And it's hard for me to figure it out. You know, when you throw these different stories and you have other people in the education saying other things, I need to get an outside view who have experience in this, doing it, and go around the state as we're doing it, taking testimony from real people who are experiencing these problems with their children at all age levels, and to figure out, come back to me and say, how do we do better? This much I know for sure, we're not doing as well as we should. The question is, how do we do better, and what do we do with the individual school districts to make sure that they address this issue? The task force is coming back in July with recommendations. I anticipate those recommendations being good and aggressive ones because of the people that are on there, and then we're going to work at implementing it. So I don't have an answer for the senior who wound up not getting the type of education that he or she deserved because they had been attending this dyslexia. But what I can tell you is, I want to make sure that your son, who's in the second grade and reading at a kindergarten level, by the time he gets to the 6th or 7th grade, is reading at a 7th, 8th, or 9th grade level without regard to the physical condition that he has. I think you know that through teaching methods and approaches that is not only possible, it's likely if it's dealt with aggressively and upfront. That's where I want to get to in the state, because I want every child to reach their full potential, regardless of what the challenges are. So that's why we put the task force together. I'm glad to hear that they went and spoke before the task force. That's why I wanted them to go around the state and have hearings. And as soon as those recommendations come back, we're going to work hard to implement them and make sure we get them in place as quickly as we can to help as many children as we can. So thanks for appearing and thanks for your questions. Are you from the press? Student press. Yeah, I can't do press. No press questions. I started looking for you. I got to go through all those people up there, so I can't do it. But sorry about that. Yes, ma'am. Back there.
My name is Walter Guarino.
Oh, I wasn't what's going on, but okay. So there for you, brother. You're the microphone to the wrong person. Okay, go ahead. I'll take the question.
Walter Guarino, Malibu, New Jersey.
Okay.
Governor Christie, you need your help. There is State Road 33, just outside here. And when that road goes into Manalapan, the speed limit is 50 miles an hour. I have written you twice, and somewhere along the line our letters might have not put in the bureaucracy. But one gentleman has already died. The road just after the state park, Battleground Park. The road is narrow. It was 50 miles an hour when it was not populated. There's a daycare center there. One person has already died. It's a dangerous.
Okay.
We need to.
I get it. I'll talk to the DOT commissioner. I mean, I don't know that section of Route 33 personally. I'll try to drive it before I leave here. But I'll go to the DOT commissioner and ask him to give me a briefing on it. I don't know about the area. If it turns out that for our traffic studies, that's too fast to speed, then we have the ability to lower that speed limit. But I'll go to the DOT commissioner and ask him to give your information to him. We'll get back to that. Now, the woman who I called out here, come on up. She's right here, too. Yeah. You got it.
Hi, my name is Michelle Platzer. I'm from Howell, New Jersey. And I have 3 Board of Social Services agencies directly impacting my household. And I'm very concerned about what's going on with the Monmouth County and Ocean County Board of Social Services. We talk about teachers need a merit system, and so do those social workers. It's horrible. I have a 28-year-old daughter, recently divorced, lost her job at Toyota because of the tsunami, and they had closed down her apartment. Has been on unemployment for 2 years, had to go there after my resources were exhausted, helping her. And I almost lost my house. I'm disabled. I have disabled. To make a long story short, going down to the Board of Social Services is a very dangerous place. There's a lot of mixed people inside there. There's people that are outraged. unearned income. Her unearned income made her ineligible. When she's sickly, she needs doctors. She inherited mind disorders, genetically, unfortunately. She is ineligible for family care. She has an 8-year-old dyslexic son who goes to Howell, and he's doing wonderfully, by the way. Teachers and the school they have him turning around. But, and also an autistic grandson that's in the same school, and they're doing wonderfully with him as well. He's just starting his school at 5. But back to this whole situation with unearned income. She's on unemployment, and she cannot get family care because of unearned income, and she makes $400 a week.
Okay, well, sometimes this stuff gets messed up in the application process. I've had a few of these town meetings where people were told, you're ineligible for family care, in fact, you're ineligible for family care. So I want you to give your information to my staff. We'll have a person from the Department of Human Services and Training call your daughter directly if you give her contact information. They can take the information over the phone and see whether you can work through the eligibility process. Because I've heard too many times at these meetings, people tell me that's something you have, and then when we have human services from the state call them, it turns out that at another level, they got it wrong. So let's try to see if we can get it right. I can't guarantee you that we can get it from them. But what I can tell you is I've seen instances before, like yours, where you were told initially by one level of government that you were ineligible, but in fact it turned out that the person was eligible. So let's let our folks work for you. Sometimes when the governor's office calls, it happens. So, so give me the information that you do the best we can help you. Yes, sir. All right.
Hey, I'm Mark from Marlboro. I'm a supporter of yours. I just have a quick question. How is New Jersey going to handle Obamacare now?
Well, first question is this kind of coming from that? You know, Supreme Court will do it sometime around the end of June, beginning of July, on whether or not Obamacare is constitutional. So my position is that I'm going to do the bare minimum that I need to do as required by the law, and not spend any more money on Obamacare, unless and until the Supreme Court rules it is constitutional. If the Supreme Court rules it is constitutional, then we have a whole variety of decisions that we have to make. If the Supreme Court rules it is unconstitutional, then we're back to square one, and New Jersey will not be ruling with the law that's unconstitutional. So we're putting everything on hold. It's not that long. I mean, we're talking now less than 2 months before a decision from the Supreme Court. Let's see what they do. You know, I think it would be imprudent for us to spend money now. That may be a waste of money, because if we find it unconstitutional, the money we invested in it is wasted. So we're going to wait, and we've got permission from the Federal Department of Health and Human Services to wait, so there won't be any penalty to us for having waited. Because I think even they who are in favor of the law understand that it's up in the air, and that it would make no sense to make taxpayers in New Jersey potentially waste money on implementing laws that may not be constitutional. So that's what I decided to do, is to ask for a waiver. We got a waiver from the feds, and we'll wait to see what happens at the end of June or beginning of July. And when we get the answer, we'll figure out what we have to do. But we're certainly not going to spend any money. All right. I've been told that I'm not asked question. So, you may think that last question was an enormous amount of pressure on me. It was about 15 or 20 of you have your hands up. And I can only pick one of you. On the other hand, I want to remind you of great pressure on you as well. Here's why. Because when you ask that question, if the audience believes that it's not a good question, they will turn on you. I've seen that, but they will move you and hiss you. So, think long, think hard about whether your question is one. There's a young lady right over there. I think I will ask her. Final question. Remember, pressure is on.
I can handle it.
I like that. From New Jersey, aren't you?
I run an organization for children with special needs. I'm from Monmouth County. I am from Manalapan, and I'm here as a mom of an autistic child from Marlboro.
And I graduated with high school.
Really? They come, I'm sure. Fellow answer. All right.
We have plans to build a facility, and we have 19 acres of land that would provide for the children with special needs and the family, social, recreational programs, as well as human rights funds. The only problem holding us back is that there's no sewage on the land. There's a water pipe of sewage going right in we have, but since our lot is not on the map, the state, we're charged by permission to have into the sewage.
So we have a DEP problem.
Yes.
We have a DEP problem. You know, if I had a nickel, we're going to have a DEP problem. They'll be able to retire. Listen, I have no idea about whether it can be done or not, but we'll get you a personal audience with the commissioner. It's important enough, especially, you know, Mary Pat and I have spent an enormous amount of our own time personally on the special needs children, especially families of children. And it's a very important issue to us. Any of the type of things that we're talking about doing that we can done to provide the type of services that we need for these families and the children across the state, we want to try to be helpful in doing. So, give your information to Joe, and we will get you your audience. Before I go, I just want to say one other thing to all of you. You know, there's so I say thank you for coming. You know, there's a whole lot of discussion around the state regularly, and it kind of ebbs and flows. You'll see it happen again as a lot of decisions need to be made over the course of the next 54 days. And I'm going to have to take some difficult positions on things. You'll see a lot of discussion where the press and some pundits and others, when you put the governor on the couch, you know what I'm talking about. And the regular stories that he said. Why is the governor the way he is? Why is he so angry? What did someone do to him when he was a kid? What happened? Why does he say the things he says? Why is he so blunt? You know, why does he use some of the words he uses? And so I'm tired of listening to all these amateur psychologists who analyze me in the newspapers. So I figure I might as well just tell you all myself, since you're here. We are all a product of our parents, right? I mean, for good and for bad, we are all a product of our parents, who they are and how they raised them. And I have an Irish father who comes from out of town hall meetings. He's not here today, but just turned 79 years old last night. He's a gregarious, outgoing guy. When he comes to these meetings, he stays after and like meets with you and tells you embarrassing stories about me. He talks to you about his grandchildren, and by the end of it, whether you like it or not, he's hugging you. And that's my dad. Now, I had a Sicilian mother. Now, for those who have experienced this is an entirely different kettle of fish. I often say, even when my dad is here, that in the automobile life, my dad was just a passenger. Mom drove the car, mom ran the show, mom ran the house, mom ran us. You heard me say in the video beforehand that my mother, you know, gave me all different kinds of advice, like, you know, give yourself, and you don't have to worry about remembering tomorrow who you pretended to be yesterday. She had a lot of those things, and she taught us a lot of that stuff growing up. I told you about the money tree wisecrack that she gave me when I was a kid. It's kind of my mom. Everything was very direct with her. And I say I had a Sicilian mother because she died this week 8 years ago. And she died of lung cancer. She was a lifetime smoker. And when she went into the final days of her life, I was in California. I was U.S. attorney at the time. And I had a national conference in San Diego. My brother, called me and said, listen, I started to give mom morphine. Like, if you want to see her, you need to call me. And all of you who've been through this kind of know what that end-of-life situation was like for someone who suffered from cancer. And so I got on the red eye. And I took the red eye home from San Diego, and I landed in New York and got in my car. I went right to the hospital at St. Barnabas in Livingston, where she was. When I got there, she was kind of in and out of things, so I sat by the bed for a while. Then she woke up. And she looked at me, she said, what day is it? I said, it's Friday. She said, what time is it? And I said, it's 9:30 in the morning. And she said, go to work. I said, well, Mom, I decided to take today off and spend today with you, so don't worry about it. She said, Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work. I'm like, what are you worried about? I think your taxpayers' money's worth? I mean, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. And she reached over, she grabbed my hand, and she said, Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There's nothing left unsaid between us. She was giving me permission. She gave me permission to let her go. And I tell you that story because she didn't just say that to me that day. That's the way she taught us to live. My mother taught us that if you have a trusting relationship with someone, that there should be nothing left unsaid between you and that person. They should know what you're thinking and what you're feeling all the time if they're really going to be able to trust you. And I know that if my mom was still here to watch this service that my life has become, that one of the things she would be saying to me is, Christopher, they trusted you with the most important job they could give. They made you the governor of their state. They trusted you to handle the state during a time of enormous challenge and crisis. Tell them what you think. Tell them how you feel. And so, you know, when people say, well, he's too blunt, he's too direct, that's why. Because I know that, you know, a year from now, a year and a half from now, whenever the red zone has me running for re-election, I know that if I do decide to do that, that everybody will have a choice today. And here's the one thing I want to make sure that happens if that day comes. That you don't walk into the voting booth and say, I wonder who he is. I wonder who he really is. I wonder what he thought about things. I wonder if he really meant the things he said. Now, I know that sometimes I say things that you read the newspapers or on TV. I'm sure that they can shake your head and say, I cannot believe you said that. And then I hope there are some days when I say things and you read or hear about it and you say, I'm glad someone finally said that out loud. Because it should be said out loud. There will be good moments and bad moments. But one thing I can guarantee you is that you won't have to wonder what I think. You won't have to wonder where I stand, what I believe in, and what I'm willing to fight for. And you may decide at the end of all this, I'm not your cup of tea, and that's okay. But you won't make that decision because you don't know who I am. And that's because that's the way I was raised. By my mother. To do it the way I'm doing it. And when I do this every day, in part, it's a tribute to her. Because I know if she were here, even though she would shake her head a lot about some of the stuff I say, she'd still be proud that I was saying it. So when I told you before, I told Lorenzo, this is a great job. And I love it. I love it every day. And I have to thank you for giving me this extraordinary opportunity. I treasure it every day. There's not a day that I drive up to that state house. I walk in that front door and see my name on the door and say, Governor underneath it. And not shake my head and say, how the hell did this happen? And if you're really quiet and you listen for the voices down the hall in the legislature, they're also saying, how the hell did this happen? For entirely different reasons. So I want to thank you. I will tell you in my county, and this is absolutely true. If it were not for Monmouth County and what you did for me in November 2009, I would not be the governor of New Jersey. I won this county with 64,000 votes. Every day I remember what Monmouth County did for me, and I'm sworn to uphold the law and do the best job I can for all 21 counties. But I'll tell you this, when you win one by 64,000 votes, it's got a little bit of special place. I want to thank you for bearing the heat here. I want to thank you for your questions and for your input. For those of you who said, we told you we're going to get back to you, we're going to. We're going to try to help the best way we can. I can't fix every problem in the state, but I will tell you this, I have the time of my life trying. So thank you all very much.